Sauce. Okay, so Jeremiah, how did you go about researching and understanding the requirements for the visa? I know you have said that you watched the YouTube videos and all of that, but how were you able to comprehend the requirements that they actually wanted you to put forward? Like, how were you able to say, okay, let me use this evidence and not this one? Okay, let me do with this one and not this one. How were you able to come up to that conclusion in your mind from the resources you get? Because sometimes the resources might not actually also be enough. Sometimes they can just give you their examples, but what if it did not relate to you? How were you able to break through that and actually understand and be able to know which resources, which evidences to bring forward and how to put together your application?
Yeah, thank you. I feel this is really an important point because going back to what we have like on the website, could say maybe evidence of employment, and so some people might have different stuff. Like me, I did more of like contract project, so that was what I used. All my contract project, like evidence of payment, and so information on the website could say salary. Your contract project could sort of be like what you could submit, and this is where having people on through the process works for you. Because I had a friend who has like gone through the process and used similar documents, and like, okay, if you don't have this, why not use? You have contract jobs you've done that really paid you good well. You can use them. I mean, they might not be salary, and this is what works. So I think because I had someone who has gone through the process, that was really one thing that really helped. Like, so in getting to like know what to put together and what not to put together. So yeah.
Yeah, that is really true. That's why we try to, future people that have already like you now, that already gone through the process, so that people can learn from you. Because I feel like one way to learn from the set of people that you want to learn from the most are people that have worked in your path, so they have more like realistic information to give you and realistic, guidance to give you, other than just listening to some people say. It's better to hear it from them. I did this, I did this, you could do this. So it's always better to do that. Okay, so Eugene, how were you able to walk through your own, from your own end, the requirements, knowing how to put together, what resources or what evidence rather to use, and how were you able to put that together? How did you walk through your own path?
Yeah, I think so. For me, mostly on from the Tech Nation website, it does have an okay way it break it down. So I just started from like that whole breakdown where there was the mandatory ones and there was the optional ones. So I just figured out how to get like those various mandatory ones. So for example, even though the first bit of it, they were like, you need 3 recommendation letters. Knowing how some of our people can be, I literally reach out to over close to 10 people for recommendation letters. I end up getting I think about 5 or 6, and I choose the 3 for the main recommendation, and I use the rest as part of other evidences, basically. And I think I kept just reading through all those stuff. I think it was like over and over reading again and trying to understand the different categories, because some of the things, they are quite closely related. Like there'll be like an evidence to show you're an exceptional, show evidence of work in this, but then you have a second point that literally sounds the same. At some point I was like, is it that I don't understand English, or this English is quite different?
Yeah, right.
But like literally I was reading like one sentence in 2 different categories, but over and over again I was like, yeah, I was questioning my English. I did in a way, but I was just trying to like categorize the thing. But eventually, in terms of the evidence, I literally just added as many as I could. There were some of the piece of evidence that literally had about 3 or 4 different evidences that I've just packed together, because the rule was you need to have 3 pages. So each evidence has to have 3 pages. And sometimes I remember one of them was like, you know what? I know this is the evidence I want to submit, but no, let me just add this just for good
Just
sake.
in case.
And
if this doesn't work, this could
yeah,
work.
if this doesn't work, at least the second page you might work. So I was just, shooting all my shots. And I think what later made me a bit more easy in terms of organizing the thing was I didn't know how to present some of the evidence. I think some of the evidence were basically straightforward to do, like for example, proof of employment, where you can get like your contract or maybe pay slip or all those kind of stuff, like Jeremiah mentioned. Certain things like as a developer, some of the evidence were like your contribution towards work. then you don't know how to actually show your contribution, because some of them were asking like proof of your source code. I was like, okay, I don't know if I should upload all my source code and everything. So at some point, like I think after reading it, I realized that I saw from somewhere that you can literally present screenshots. So I was just taking screenshots of my GitHub and like contribution I've done in open source, where it just shows my name, my picture, and at least a little bit of information.
Yeah.
So it was, for me, the whole process was just taking my time to really organize those information and trying to fit as many information as possible, relevant information as
Yeah,
possible in
exactly.
those 3 pages per each evidence, and probably categorizing them and submitting it at the right categories.
Okay, okay. Wow, that was very, very detailed. I mean, you already started touching in on, my next question, but I'm still going to ask it because I feel like you didn't really touch it as much as I would want it to. Okay, so I would start with you, Eugene. Okay, so now during the application process, obviously you have to provide your MC, that's the mandatory criteria, and your OC, the optional criteria. So so can you walk us through, your preparation process, and how did you gather, the necessary documents, and what were the example of evidences that you used for each category? Because I know this is a question, especially on the Tech Nation forum, the discourse forum. A lot of people just come up with their evidences and they'll be like, can this fit in as an OC? Can I use this as an MC? So it would be nice if you can give us like a walkthrough of your own, so that in case someone wants to replicate that in future.
Okay, sure. To be honest, I've forgotten the exact specific categories I pick, but I
Okay.
think while during that process, what I realized was, like I was saying, the English were very closely related, and some of the evidence may or may not really apply for both, and it was like a very thin line for most of the things.
Yeah.
What I think I really did was to try to find things that I felt were more strong and were a bit more easy to sell. So for me, I had my entrepreneurship journey where I started a business. I was a CTO and I've raised funding, and I had like VC backed company. So my mandatory requirement, I think, mostly was two major things. It was the first one, showing evidences of like companies that I've worked in that like shows high like yield and all those stuff. I'd worked in like some US companies here and there, like remote work, which was quite like a good thing. So I think that I just had to provide like things like my proof of employment. That was like this straightforward. When it comes to showing businesses that I've started, which was I think one of the points under the mandatory requirement, I chose that category where I had to basically show them that I either started a business, running a business, was backed by VC and other
Yeah.
stuff. So with that, most of my evidence was literally included my business, the business registration documents, and all those documents that kind of have my name as some parts. Then there was the literally I had to literally show a copy of the investment agreement I got from the VC, which shows the name of the company and the amount that they were investing in the company as like a investment. Then literally screenshots from Google Analytics showing how the company has been running for 3 years. It has X amount of users, it has international users and all those stuff. So I attach all those documents to basically build up like the mandatory ones. And I think when it came to the optional ones, it was any other thing that I can actually literally use. So I had to now start thinking about like other things that I can add. So I had like the other unused recommendation letters that I had, which I think was still talking to me about like what I've done in terms of. So I had two types of different types of recommendation letter. I have one that was more talking about my skills as a software engineer, because that's how those people knew me. And I had some recommendation letters from like the accelerators and incubators I've been through, that's talking about my skills as an entrepreneur and how like I build a business and all those stuff. So I basically was able to know where to put these things. And I think one thing I'll really mention what guided me in terms of my evidence was basically the whole story of my application, which literally started from the personal statement. So it wasn't even just starting at the evidence bit. So I feel my evidence, how I structured my evidence was based on my personal statement, because my personal statement
Okay.
was tone in a way that I'm a software engineer with X experiences. I've started a business once in Ghana. I've raised X amount of funding from this investor and grants from these investors. And the plan is to start another business. and the plan is to be able to go a bit more global, and that's the reason why I want to come to the UK. That was literally my personal statement in like some few sentences. So my
Yeah.
evidences was basically showing that I'm a software engineer and I've been working like X amount of years, and evidence of my previous business and how well it did, and the fact that I was able to raise money, and basically any other thing that was supporting it. I think at some point I literally even added my different school degree certificates to it, because I was like, yeah, I did some nice certificates in computer engineering and cybersecurity, which was quite good grades. So all those things where I feel was very not strong enough, so it was just as part of the like the optional ones.
Okay, okay. Wow, that was very, very detailed. Thank you so much. And like I feel like I can actually listen to you and then go and put together something to apply. And that was very, very detailed. So, Jeremy, please, can you also walk us through your application process? The necessary documents you used and how you structured it, just so you could help someone that is listening.
Okay, thank you. I think this is the highlight of the whole question because I mean,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So, one thing I'll say that this is the part where evidence thrives over story. Because here it's not about the story again; it's about the evidence of all the whole stories you've told in your personal statement. You've done this, you've done that. This is where they want to see the evidence, and this is where I see a lot of people make issues. Before I come to my aids, they tell stories without having to have the evidence to back up the stories, and that is where the issue is always, because someone might have read a very good statement, and at the end of the day, I'm looking for something to back up all these stories you've told me, but I can't see anything. So for me, the first thing I did was to look at my journey and start to note things that I feel, I mean, from the list of things I've seen, what is it that I fit in into? And I made the list of the three MC and the OC. The MC was the first thing. The funny thing was, I mean, um, it wasn't in line with how it was stated, by the way. So I listed things that I feel they were core and I used them as my MC and looked at other things that I feel that, okay, they are not too strong, but this is something like that can work. I think the first thing that was, I said that it was really like strong thing for me was I was a media person. So I was like all over the media. I've appeared in papers in Vanguard, here in the UK. I've appeared in paper in Canada, done a few things because I work with an organization. Okay, let's not go there. We'll have time to tell the stories anyway. But yeah, I've like been a media person. So having strong media presence was a thing for me. So I had to put that as one of the like strongest like evidence. The second strong evidence was having to, I've also been an entrepreneur, just like Eugene. I started a company back in 2000. I've started two companies back in 2000, and one was 17 and one is 218. I had a company which is called Fun Fashion, which I mean, we tried to align fashion with technology. And when we launched the business, we got like over close to 1,000 tellers registered, and we like made like a couple of money. We got investors who were really interested, and we're trying to automate the whole tailoring process. People could stay in their house, put their camera, they measure their clothes, put their fabrics together on the app, and we have tailors and fashion designers that their work is put it together just the same way you've designed on the app and get it for you. So you can also we have VR system that could let you feel how the clothes was. But the issue was back in 2018, it wasn't like a big technology wasn't in terms of VR and AR stuff wasn't like a big thing in Nigeria. So it was a setback for us for investors. And yeah, that was why the business was. And I used that as an evidence. I had to take screenshot of all the sales we made. The tellers we got, investors they were ready to invest like in our business, put all those stuff together. Other strong evidence for me was had a company I was working with to start a business in the UK, which is called Frank. And we are doing like one of the biggest, like first of its kind stuff in the UK. We wanted to find a way to make provide a royalty card that everyone could use across like every shop. So probably if you like use the card to shop in Aldi, you get points which could be converted into cash. So it was like another strong evidence to me. Other evidence I used was like evidence of being being involved in one of the like biggest project, if anyone have heard about Help You, and it was one project we did back then. I worked with Sadit, which was the owner. So Help You was just to help people to report rape cases in North Nigeria. So, and it was a big project because we got over 15 awards internationally. CNN published it, Al Jazeera published it, and like we invited to so many international stages. So that was like a big flex for me. So one thing I'll just say is, I mean, yeah, I also included degree certificates. I think one of the requirement was if you have distinction, which is like academic excellency. So yeah, so yeah, I met double distinction from my MSCs, so I had to include that. It was like a separate document on its own. So other things here, like little stuff such as like contribution to national growth. I've worked on a national project which I've been part of, like in Nigeria. So all this stuff were things like I put together for the application. So one thing I'll keep saying is look out for the strongest things you have and put them first before the weakest like stuff. Other ones you can use them. I mean, if you're to submit 9 documents and you have 7 strong ones, don't ignore the 3 other ones. Just make sure that it's if it's 9 that I mean 9 is the maximum, just be at the maximum. Put those little ones that you feel that they don't want anything. They might just be there to like to support your application. So yeah.
Yeah, that thank you so much for this walkthrough. I feel like the most important highlights of it should be the evidence part. So when you tell your story, make sure that everything you are talking about in your story, you have evidence for it. In a Nigerian setting, we said you have evidence. Evidence there. So you have to have evidence of what you're saying. Don't just say it, have your evidence to actually back up your claims. So thank you so much for that beautiful walkthrough, and that was very explanatory and very in-depth. And I honestly feel like anyone listening to you can pick up 1 or 2 things to actually put together in their own application. Okay, so Eugene, I will just go back to the next question. I know you already talked about you being rejected, so please let's just talk about that more, because I know the experience of being rejected. When you receive that email where they say your evidence is not strong enough, they're telling you stories, and then at the end of the day they conclude that, oh, you have been rejected. So how did you deal with that particular setback? I know, how were you able to the things that they said didn't work, how were you able to correct them and put back the application?
Yeah, so I think one thing I'll just say is, first of all, if you get rejected, obviously don't feel down. The key thing is to, I think one thing I really liked about the global talent, or at least from Tech Nations, when they reject you, there's literally a whole form detailing why you were rejected. I don't know if that applies to everyone, but like at least I did get like a whole form with like
Right.
description on the part that was a pass, the part that was rejected, and the reasons and even everything. So it was a bit very straightforward for me. So for me, the 2 main things that I got from that rejection email was, the first one was just a technical issue. So 2 of my recommendation letters wasn't signed and stamped, which was just a very simple, straightforward mistake that was overlooked. So those 2 letters were not considered totally. And those were the three main recommendation letters I was supposed to provide. So that already automatically the whole application was handicapped. So that was a very little tiny mistake that I think anyone applying should make sure you really look out for, to just not repeat, because it was just them not signing it just caused me the thing. And the second other one, that was more of like a comment. It wasn't really the reason, but it was like just a comment. But I think that even kind of back up the point Jeremy said about the fact that you can tell a story, but if you don't have the evidence to show for it, it kind of still doesn't match up. It doesn't, like, there's no receipt for it. So like I told you about how my personal statement was written about the fact that I started a company, I raised 100K plus some extra other grants. There was no specific evidence to show that. So basically, the comments I got from whoever reviewed my application was like, you did talk about the fact that you raised the company. We've seen the company registrations, you've seen your business operations and everything, but nothing shows you really received the money. I even showed screenshots of the page, the newsletter publications about that. These companies received money from this VC, and literally my name and the company was part of those news things. But I think it was still not quite very clear enough that this is the evidence that shows I received the money. So they were even asking about things like bank statements and investment agreements. So that's where my second application I had to make sure, first of all my recommendation letters were signed and even stamped when possible. Then I added the investment agreement as an extra evidence to be able to back up the part of what I'm talking about, me receiving funding. But I think the key thing was